Hello trainers, Professor Palm here, and I personally believe that out of all 19 typings, I think that debatably the dragon typing is the strongest one that we got. When looking back at Gen 1, we only had 3 Pokemon that had the dragon typing, but now looking at where we are in the 9th generation, we have so many dragon type Pokemon. My, how times have changed. What also makes dragon-type Pokemon so fascinating is the natures that they have. There are some dragon Pokemon that you meet and are sweet as cinnamon buns. They're adorable and they like to make friends with everyone. However, as the pendulum does swing both ways, we also have dragon-type Pokemon that are destructive creatures that'll hack and slash anything that enters their territory. And this is what I think is amazing about dragon-type Pokemon. They come in so many varieties, in many shapes and sizes. However, they do not come in every single typing, as we currently do not have a dragon bug type yet. Another reason why I see dragon typing as such a strong typing is in almost every region, we've been introduced to at least one pseudo-legendary Pokemon that has the dragon typing, with the exception of Tyranitar, as it's the only pseudo-legendary introduced in a generation that didn't introduce any other dragon pseudo-legendary. You never forget capturing your first ever dragon-type Pokemon, as well as your first ever pseudo-legendary Pokemon. We sure have a lot of pseudo-legendary Pokemon, a total of 10 right now. However, out of all 10, there's that one pseudo-legendary line that's unlike any other. I'm of course going back to Gen 5, debatably one of the best gens ever, as it introduced so many dragon-type Pokemon. It also introduced probably the most terrifying dragon line as well as pseudo-legendary ever. And I have it with me in this Pokeball right now. Should I let it out? Well, I guess I should. Alright, come on out, Deino! Yep, I have with me my Deino. However, I would say that this Pokemon is even more dangerous the more you look at it. It might look cute and innocent, but trust me, with the dual typing of Dark and Dragon, that's a terrifying combination. And this is just stage 1, because when it becomes Zwileous, it becomes even more terrifying. But if you want to see how much more brutal it can get, go for the full stage with Hydreigon, and you have yourselves 3 Doomsday Dragons. If you think that Ghost-type Pokemon are scary, Ghost-type Pokemon are terrified of Deino, Zweilous, and Hydregion. These Pokemon are the very definition of the word vicious. Once they get into a battle, it will not end until they know that they've won. Even if that Pokemon's down, they'll still be blasting, biting, and tearing it apart. This is the most unhinged dragon line ever. And, in my opinion, I kind of think that's pretty impressive that we've never seen any other dragon Pokemon become as vicious as this. Usually, whenever we start our journey with a starter Pokemon, or catch a Pokemon, we're told to raise it with love and affection. That doesn't exist to these Pokemon. In fact, it's the complete opposite. They don't know anything about love, kindness, or caring. But what these 3 Pokemon know are 3 words. Destroy, devour, and terminate. Once these Pokemon are mad, there is no stopping them. When I say pseudo-legendary Pokemon, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Garchomp perhaps? Maybe Dragonite? Well, we do have 10 of them, but for me, it's always going to be Hydreigon. When I think of something powerful with that name, Hydreigon wins by far. I don't think I've ever met a more powerful line than Deino, Zweilous, and Hydreigon. Also, I'll never understand how Ghetsis managed to get himself a Hydreigon. That is probably one of the scariest Pokemon you could ever see. The moment that thing looks you in the eye, you know it's over. But I also have to say that this is a line that I've always thought of when I think of power. Seeing that we don't have any other Dark and Dragon type Pokemon so far on this planet is proof of just how terrifying that combo can be. So, let's get down to business. It's gonna get a little violent, so you might want to step back. So, let's talk all about Deino, Zweilous, and Hydreigon. But before we begin, I want to give a very special thanks and shout out to fellow subscriber, Puppy Sparkles, for the request of this video. I know how much you love Dragon-type Pokemon, Puppy Sparkles, so I hope that you enjoy this video to the fullest. However, there's one more person I want to thank. A very special thanks and shout out goes to artist HTTP Koopa for making my dragon uniform. If you like these uniforms that I wear in my videos, you can buy them on Etsy. I have a link to HTTP Koopa's Etsy shop in the description below. Since we're talking all about dragon-type Pokemon, I couldn't think of a better shirt to wear than this one. If you want to see what other stuff he has on his shop, check him out. And remember to say Professor Palm sent ya. Uh-oh. Looks like they're all smelling you, trainers. Might want to back up a little bit because Deino seems very hungry. And this little Pokemon has quite an appetite. I think it smells at your food. So, let's talk all about this tiny little dinosaur dragon of destruction, Deino. He smells you! Run! Deino, the irate Pokemon, is based on brachiosaurs, as well as juvenile dragons. It also has some characteristics of sauropods. However, what Deino draws the most inspiration from are cave salamanders, which are blind cave creatures. For the habitat of Deino, you'll find them living in caves, as they like the smell and the warmth of these places. However, Deino are found near abundant water sources and caves, as they like being close to the water, and they really like drinking a lot. Surprisingly, they're good swimmers. Deino are completely blind Pokemon. It's unknown if they even have eyes. Some people think that their eyes are blind, and some think they don't even have eyes. They do not take well to objects touching their head. If you try to check, Deino will lash out and attack you. Since Deino is blind, it resorts to using tackle and bite to learn their surroundings. Unfortunately, Deino bumps into a lot of things that if you look very carefully, you'll see that their bodies are all covered in wounds. That's not the only thing you have to worry about with its scratch and bite. Deino are rather aggressive, and they have very short tempers. This results in them picking fights with so many other Pokemon, and with those powerful claws, it leaves their enemies with as many scars as they have. You may not see it, but Deino has a powerful bite to it, as it bites everything around it, and it's not a picky eater. Deino can break bones and even bite off limbs with just a single crunch. Approaching it carelessly can be extremely dangerous. Even though it lacks sight, Deino's 4 other senses are high in power, especially both its sense of taste and smell. Once Deino likes what it tastes, it'll commit that associated taste to memory and never forget it. Also, Deino has a powerful sense of smell, so once it smells something, it can never forget it. And this also helps it guide its way through the darkness. The reason why Deino bites everything is because food where it lives in the caves is extremely scarce. So, Deino will sink its teeth into anything that moves and attempt to eat it, hoping that it's something delicious. You better have a first aid kit on you if you want to raise a Deino, because you and your Pokemon will be covered in so many wounds. This is because until Deino warms up to you, it'll only determine whether or not you are food. Deino's pure dragon power actually comes from its massive appetite. The more it eats or bites into, the more power that flows through it, causing so much destruction and damage to everything around it. However, when Deino gets hungry, its power of destruction runs empty. For a small dragon that can't see, it sure does a lot of damage with both its teeth, claws, and powerful blasts. Despite being blind, Deino is one Pokemon you'll dread seeing, especially when it's mad. But if you want to see how it can do double the damage, well, let's evolve our Deino into Zwileous. With those twin heads of Zwileous, you know you're going to deal with double the trouble. Zweilous, the hostile Pokemon, is based on the Lemurian Hydra from Greek mythology. Zweilous also draws similarities to that of brachiosaurs, being the dinosaurs with the long necks. It also is based on cave salamanders, due to living in caves as well as being completely blind. Also, the tread-like markings on Zweilous' body appear to be reminiscent of tanks. For the habitat of Zweilous, they prefer to live in dark and warm places, just like caves, as they like rigid places. Also, they like being close to the water. Zweilous patrols the caves, claiming it as their own territory. Despite having a buddy system with twin heads, Zweilous' 2 heads do not get along with each other. In fact, The two heads have completely different brains, and each of them have different likes and dislikes from each other. Most of the time, one head likes something that the other hates. Both heads of Zwileous like to compete with each other for everything, especially battling. But the thing that they compete the most in is eating. The head who eats the most gets to be in charge for the time being. Because they compete for their food, Zweilous always overeats, and usually they always fight over just a single piece of food. Something funny about Zweilous is because the heads fight with each other, Zweilous gets stronger without needing to battle any other Pokemon. In fact, these Pokemon have big fights over the simplest of things, like which way to go, what to eat, and of course, when to sleep and when to get up. These Pokemon have constant fights over everything. However, because its two heads fight all the time, Zwileous is covered in scars without ever battling any other Pokemon. Unlike its previous evolution, Deino, it's debatable whether or not Zweilous is actually blind, since these Pokemon always seem to damage one another without ever failing. If you happen to have a Zweilous, you and your Pokemon better give each head the same amount of attention, because if you don't, both Zweilous' heads will fight out of jealousy for affection. The rounded points at the top of Zweilous' head act as a radar system and a second pair of ears. It easily alerts both heads of what's going on, and they're very sensitive. Zweilous can hear everything around it. Even something as small as a whisper can be heard like a loud shout with these two rounded points. As bad as Zweilous fighting with each other is, trust me, it's a blessing in disguise. Because when Zweilous' two heads actually get along on occasion and fight together, they fight as twins of chaos, as their powerful blast from their twin heads will not stop until their enemy and everything around it is burned to a crisp. Because of this power they have the nickname the Twin Terror. The claws of this twin dragon are not only sharp, but they are great for climbing. Zweilous can easily climb cave walls, go on the ceiling, and easily climb cliffs with its sharp claws. Also, it digs its own tunnels, as these sharp claws act as shovels. The sharper these claws are, the stronger they are, and you should avoid them, as if it scratches you, it can leave nasty scars. These twin-headed dragons sure are double the trouble. Well, sometimes bad things come in pairs. As they say, two heads are better than one. But how about three? That's right. We go for the triple threat when Zweilous goes to the next level. So let's evolve Zweilous into Hydregion. If you think a dragon's rampage is scary, you haven't seen a triple threat like Hydregion and its three heads of destruction. Hydregion, the brutal Pokemon, is based on Yamada no Orochi, which was a red-eyed, eight-headed dragon or serpent from Japanese mythology. Hydregion also draws inspiration from the Lemurian Hydra from Greek mythology, who you may know as the monster that Hercules took on. It also draws inspiration from King Ghidorah from Godzilla. And its purple scale pattern is very reminiscent of tanks, since Hydregion destroys everything very much like tanks. If you want to find Hydregion, you can find them flying high in the sky, as they're always on the go and never stop for anything. They like the open skies. However, when they rest, Hydregion settles down in the mountains as well as the ruins, as they like places that remind them of destruction. Unlike its previous evolutions, who both lacked eyes, Hydregion now has them. However, this baneful Pokemon is just as blind, as all it can think about is destroying everything around it. Though, Hydregion's eyes are actually rather well adapted, as it can see in the dark, underwater, and even through the heaviest of storms. Hydregion responds to anything that moves by marking it as an enemy, which triggers it to attack. Once Hydregion and the other Pokemon make eye contact, Hydregion will attack, and the battle between Hydregion and the other Pokemon will not end unless Hydregion is beaten or decides that the fight is over with the other Pokemon, even if they stopped moving a long time ago. Even though Hydregion has three vicious heads, only the central head has a brain, while its other two just sort of act as its hands. Hydregion is surprisingly very intelligent, with its head being filled with 3 times the brain power. Unfortunately, it doesn't use its brain power for good thinking, as only destructive thoughts are what go on in Hydreigion's mind. When Hydreigon battles, its 3 vicious heads take turns sinking its teeth into the opponent. The teeth of Hydreigon are as sharp as chef knives. Hydreigon will not slow down with its assault until its target goes down and stops moving. Hydreigon and Haxorus have a rivalry in the wild. Usually, Hydreigon's body is covered in the scars by Haxorus's sharp axes. Surprisingly, Hydreigon treasures these scars. The more it has, the stronger it appears towards other Haxoruses, showing it the many battles it's had as well as the ones it's won. The 6 tattered wings on Hydreigon may not look all that impressive, but they're actually incredibly strong. Not only can they carry Hydreigon's weight, but they can fly Hydreigon as fast as 150 miles per hour. Not even an air current can stop these thin and tattered wings, as they can adapt in seconds. Whatever stands within Hydreigon's path will be instantly destroyed. Whether it uses its 3 heads, its tail, or wings, nothing can escape Hydreigon's wrath. This vicious Pokemon shows no mercy to anyone or anything. With over 1,000 different Pokemon, every one of them is unique. And Hydreigon, Zweilous, and Deino are some of the most aggressive and violent dragons that you'll ever meet. And because of that, they sure have some cool things to talk on. So here's some fun facts and tidbits about this destructive dragon line. Deino, Zweilous, and Hydreigon were the first ever pseudo-legendary dragon line to have the dragon typing as their secondary typing rather than their primary typing. Deino is so far the only Pokemon to have its letters of the English name all be in alphabetical order. Zwileous was the first ever dragon and dark-type Pokemon to have multiple heads on one body. Hydreigon evolves at the highest level of all Pokemon that evolve by level up, as it evolves at level 64. This is actually a reference to the year 1964, the year that debuted King Ghidorah from Godzilla, who you may know as the dragon with 3 heads. For the abilities of Hydreigon, Zweilous, and Deino, they each have different ones. Both Zweilous and Deino have the ability Hustle as their only ability. This lowers their accuracy but boosts their attack, since these Pokemon are blind, while Hydreigon has the ability Levitate as its only ability, which makes it fly and unable to be hit by ground moves. Also, this is the only pseudo-legendary line that has no hidden abilities. Deino was the first ever basic stage pseudo-legendary Pokemon to be quadrupedal, as all others before it, except for Dratini, all were bipedal. In all Gen 5 games, no trainer uses a Zweilous on their team. The only way to register Zweilous to your Pokedex is to either catch it in Pokemon Black and White 2, evolve Deino, or trade. It also shares this trait with Rufflet, Volibee, Mandibuzz, and Fearothorn, as no other trainer owned them. Hydreigon is the signature Pokemon of Team Plasma leader Ghetsis in both Black and White and in Black and White 2. On a rather interesting note, in Black and White 2, his Hydreigon has the lowest level of friendship, so when it uses frustration, it does maximum damage, showing how brutal and terrible of a trainer Ghetsis is. According to interviews with Ken Sugimori in Nintendo Dream, Hydreigon, Zweilous, and Deino were originally intended to have aspects of tanks, but it was scrapped. However, the treadmark-like pattern on both Zweilous and Hydreigon is the only part which still remains of what they could have been. While we have many Pokemon that have 3 heads, Hydreigon is so far the only Pokemon to have heads for hands. Hydreigon has a future relative that was introduced in Gen 9, being Iron Jugulus, who can only be found in Area 0 in Pokemon Violet. And at last, all members of the family share their unique Dark and Dragon typing with only one other Pokemon, being Guzzlord. Deino, Zweilous, and Hydreigon sure are filled with nothing but lots of rage. This makes them so dangerous to take on, especially with those powerful jaws and heads. However, like almost all Pokemon, these unhinged dragons have weaknesses, which come in handy in case you ever have to take one of them on. With their Dark and Dragon typing, these rageful Pokemon are weak against moves that are Bug type, Fighting type, Dragon type, and Ice type. However, these are only 2 times weaknesses for Hydreigon, Zweilous, and Deino, as they have a major threat that they cannot stand. And that, of course, is to Fairy type. Because of all three of them having the typing of Dark and Dragon, Fairy type moves will do 4 times super effective damage against all of them. Oh, and did I mention that none of their Dragon type moves will do any damage to Fairy types? Talk about a double whammy for this aggressive line. That's a total of 5 weaknesses for our vicious Dragon line. At least there's a way to stop the rage of Deino, Zweilous, and Hydregion. However, if you want to see the massive damage that these dragons can do, then let's check out their strengths. As when Hydregion, Zweilous, and Deino go into battle, their Dark and Dragon type moves get great stab, especially with super effective moves on Pokemon who are Ghost type, Dragon type, and Psychic type. But Psychic type is a plus for Deino, Zwileous, and Hydregion, as they're completely immune from being hurt by any of these moves, as their Dark typing negates all damage from Psychic type moves. So, all in all, only 3 strengths for Deino, Zweilous, and Hydregion. They may not have as many strengths as they do have weaknesses, but trust me, with their savage disposition, they have attacks that pretty much act like super effective against everyone, as they will not stop a fight until their opponent stops moving. However, we're still not done, as this line has one more thing to it. Hydregion, on the other hand, gets a special immunity when in battle, not just because of its Dark typing, but because of its ability, Levitate. It cannot be hit by ground type moves. Those tattered wings sure make it a vicious sky predator, and a threat above to anyone who challenges it. And with that berserk nature, I guess you could call it a demon of the sky. Deino, Zweilous, and Hydregion are unlike any other pseudo-legendary line that we've ever met. That's because they are the most cruel, destructive, and rage-filled Pokemon we just might have ever seen. Dark and Dragon typing are already a terrifying combo, but if you think about it, it's 2 of probably the most powerful typings completely powered by anger. Even though this line didn't get a Mega Evolution, I'm kinda glad, as I can't even imagine how much more vicious Hydregion could have gotten when it goes Mega. Most Dragon Pokemon are already a handful to many trainers, but they usually only have 1 head, not 2 or even 3. This is something that I've always liked and admired about Deino, Zweilous, and Hydregion. This was the first Dragon type line to gain multiple heads through evolution, and even have heads for hands. That really makes them a standout above the rest. With those heads and that short fuses they all have, Hydregion, Zweilous, and Deino can easily demolish an entire city with their dragon power, as easy as Eins, Zwei, Drei. This just might be the most evil Pokemon line ever made, other than their sadistic and insolent nature, as well as all 3 members having the evil typing. You have to jump through hoops to get this entire line to evolve, as Deino evolves into Zweilous at level 50, and Zweilous evolves into Hydregion at level 64, which is the highest level possible for any Pokemon to evolve. However, I would say that in the end, it is all worth it, as you have yourself an ultimate fighting machine. And once it goes into battle, they will not stop until they're a winner. So yeah, they fight pretty dirty, as they won't give up till it's over in their favor. It's easy to see why Hydregion, Zweilous, and Deino are some of the strongest Pokemon alive. All that rage from the start to the end is unlike anything else, and it never subsides. It just gets stronger and stronger. This line may have started off its journey blind, but trust me, even with eyes, they're all just as blind in the end, as all they can see is red, and everything around them is a target that must be ripped apart, devoured, or blown into oblivion. I guess you could call it blind brutality. Wow, Puffy Sparkles, I see why you like this line. It is pretty impressive, but at the same time, it is terrifying to see how much power every one of them packs. It's like every one of them breaks the scale and goes from 10 to 11, 12, and so on. This was a pretty fun line to talk about. Also, trainers, are you a fan of Deino, Zweilous, and Hydregion? Before we end this, I just have a few questions for you. When it comes to pseudo-legendary Pokemon, who is so far your favorite one that we've ever been introduced to? The Unova region sure introduced a lot of Pokemon, with a total of 150. Also, it introduced so many Dragon types. Who is your favorite dragon type introduced in Unova, as well as favorite Unovian Pokemon? Dragon and Dark is already a pretty terrifying combo, as it's already two of the most aggressive typings put together. But what do you think is the best typing that's been paired up with Dragon so far? Also, do you think that we need a Dragon Bug type in the future? Raising Dragon type Pokemon is a lot of fun, but it also can be a lot of work. What's your favorite Dragon type line, as well as what was your favorite Dragon type Pokemon that you've ever raised? Since Hydregion, Zweilous, and Deino are some of the most destructive Pokemon out there, who in your opinion do you think takes the crown for most destructive Pokemon, as well as Pokemon line? Since Hydregion evolves at the highest level possible of 64, who was the hardest Pokemon that you have ever had to evolve if it wasn't Hydregion? And of course, when it comes to Dark type Pokemon, do you think that they are just as brutal as Dragon type Pokemon because of how wickedly powerful they are? Also, who's your favorite Dark type Pokemon line? And do you think that we should get another Pseudo Legendary of the Dark typing? Thank you once again for the idea of this video, Puffy Sparkles. I hope that you enjoyed this video to the fullest. And I also want to thank all of you out there for 2,000 subscribers. I never thought it was going to be possible. I thought I wouldn't hit it as early as I did, but you changed it for the better. So thank you, trainers. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. And if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want to answer any of the questions that I just threw at you, you want me to cover another Pseudo Legendary line, do another Pseudo Study video, or make a video on another Pokemon line, or you have an idea that you want turned into a video, then please comment. And as always, if you liked what you saw and you want to see more, smash the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, trainers, and thank you for everything you've done. I'm glad I became a Pokemon professor for viewers like you. Palm out.